Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined for the second time by Andrew, and we are here for episode 2 of My Star Wars Show. And today, we're talking all about something very special, something that Andrew picked out for all of you. You're very lucky that we've got a mind as sharp as his on the podcast. But before we get into the topic, if you want to talk to us about Star Wars or anything else at all, be sure to join the Discord link as usual, top of the description really down there. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. We've got a lot of great end of the year content coming, games, films, what have you. So you want to stick around. But Andrew, this is your topic. Why don't you start us out today and take us on this journey into the realm of Star Wars vehicles?
Thank you, Abram. Thanks for entrusting me with this great honor. So let's get started. So as when I first suggested this topic to you, I mentioned I think I told you that for me, like, it's not even like the Jedi or the Sith or like even although lightsabers are very important, they're very iconic, but for me, when I think of Star Wars, the first thing that comes to mind is the vehicles.
Yeah.
Because the vehicles are ultimately what made me fall in love with Star Wars as a kid. Because I mean, you and I have talked about like toys and stuff, and when it comes to toys, like vehicles or anything that looks cool, like robots, machines, like those are like for a young boy, like the coolest types of toys.
Yes.
And I remember seeing like the freaking AT-AT and the not we don't say that here.
No, we definitely
AT-AT.
don't.
And like X-wings and TIE fighters, and like those are the coolest things. I remember as a kid, I would like get line paper and a pen, and like before I even knew what fan fiction was, I had like vehicle fan fiction where I could come up with my own like X-wing, no, my own TIE fighter variants, like,
Yeah.
because in Star Wars there's so many variant. The TIE fighter is probably the one that has the most like variants with like the cockpits and like the angular wings and stuff. And I would draw like, okay, like what would like a republic or what would a rebellion and like empire vehicle look like if it was like in a water world kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I would like draw like what I imagine what like an X-wing would look like if it could like, go on water or dive or something. And like what would a TIE fighter that could like submerge underwater look like and put like a little like propeller thing on the back. Like, I love, like, my imagination would go wild when it comes to Star Wars vehicles because it's just freaking cool, man. Like the ships, the Millennium Falcon, obviously. The funny thing with the Millennium Falcon, and kind of going to a tangent here, but like I find it funny how it's so iconic. But as a kid, I did not like it because I don't know if it's a universal thing, but I know humans, we like things that are symmetrical.
Yeah.
And the Millennium Falcon is not exactly symmetrical. Like the cockpit is off to one side, and it's just like I think of that line of where Leia's like, "You came in that hunk of junk," or no, I think Luke says like, that's a hunk of junk," and then like
Yeah.
Han Solo's like very fiercely defensive, like she's made the Kessel Run in less than, I forget the parsecs, but the whole like a Millennium Falcon. I think it's funny how it's like such an iconic ship, but it's not like the design is not kind of it's not an orthodox design, I guess you could say, because it's very
Yeah.
bulky. It's not that pretty. I think maybe with the years I've grown to love its design, but it's very kind of just like, it's a freighter, right? It's a light
Yeah.
freighter, and it's just like not that good looking. But it's, I think with so much of the pop culture, kind of, we've just been like exposed to it for so long. Like you see the Millennium Falcon, and you kind of just like I remember when you first see it in The Force Awakens, right? Camera pans off to the side. There's the Millennium Falcon, and I remember that everybody that woo, like all the clapping and cheering. And Abram's not a huge fan of that, but there was a lot of clapping and cheering.
Yeah.
And it's like how insane is that? That just not even a character, Abram. Although you could argue the Millennium Falcon is a character in itself, but like a vehicle would elicit that kind of reaction from the audience. So I think Star Wars more than any franchise, really, like its vehicles are almost like characters of themselves in a way. So
Yeah,
Millennium
I agree. I agree completely. You think about this, like you got like the DeLorean and the Ecto One, but that's
Right.
about it, right? But when you
Yeah.
think about Star Wars, they are so iconic. And that Force Awakens shot is so great when they're running and Finn gestures off. He like gestures off screen and he's like, what about this thing? And then Rey's like, it's a piece of junk. And so they're running towards this faster ship. It gets blown up. It
That's
cuts
right.
to the Millennium Falcon. She goes, the piece of junk will do, and it plays the theme. And like they know that these vehicles mean a lot, and I think you're totally right about them becoming characters because they are characters, in my opinion. They're these hubs of activity, and sometimes they interface directly with characters. So droids are a good example for me. One of the reasons I love Star Wars vehicles is they feel alive, because I always think about the beginning of Revenge of the Sith when Anakin and Obi-Wan are flying in the Jedi Starfighters towards General Grievous's flagship, and the buzz droids attack them, and it's R4 and R2 on Obi-Wan and Anakin's ships respectively, and they're fighting off the buzz droids, and you yell at the astromech droid to repair things. Like, there's a symbiosis between the characters and their vehicles. They're not disposable. And I think that's why they're so interesting. I love the way the droids play into the whole vehicle conversation.
Yeah. You're right. I don't know if you got into this part in like the EU stuff, but there's actually a book just about the Millennium Falcon, where it's actually the history of it coming off the assembly line, the exact same one that Han gets. Like, it goes through every single user in the book up until it gets
Oh,
to
cool.
Han. So like, it's first, how in Revenge of the Sith, like we see it arriving right as Anakin and Obi-Wan arriving like right above it, right? Like, the book starts off right around there with like the first, like, the prologue is a whole like how the ship comes off the assembly line, and like it's like going crazy and stuff or whatever. And like, I remember like in the beginning, like one of the maintenance or like engineers is like, oh, like this ship has like it's like really like wild, like, oh, there must be something wrong with like the onboard computer. And it kind of like right there cements like, yeah, like, this is a ship that has like personality and spunk, and like that's gonna be carried forward like for the entire franchise, because like it like the story follows like, okay, so like when it arrives in Revenge of the Sith in the beginning, it's actually carrying I think it's two senators who are already conspiring against the Palpatine and stuff.
Cool.
And then they get, it's really early spoilers, so it's not a big deal. And then they get like captured by like I forget the guy's name. You know the guy who always shadows Palpatine, the one with the blue horns?
Oh,
Like,
yes, yes.
I
I know you're
can't
talking
remember
about.
his name, but they describe his character. He comes in and like he intercepts them and kind of does like a Gestapo thing where he like confiscates, he takes them away,
Yeah.
and then the ship gets passed on. Like, okay, like, yeah, like somebody come. I forgot how the story goes. Somebody comes and gets the ship, and then like they somehow like outrun the blockade, because if you remember, there's like a kind of like a blockade thing going on, and it like it like light speeds away somewhere else, and then the story kind of just goes on from there. And there it goes to when Lando gets a hold of it, although it doesn't match up exactly to the Solo movie, because the canon stuff.
Yeah.
But it passes from owner to owner to when it finally ends with Solo. And there's like some kind of the whole point of the story is that since like its early days, like the Millennium Falcon has been carrying like encrypted like secrets or whatever. And so like it catches up to Solo about like I think 30-40 years after the movies.
Yeah.
And in the story, like there's a special like, it's kind of like a treasure hunt where like it's kind of like a national, have you seen the movie National Treasure? It's kind of like that story, but with like a Star Wars skin, and like the Millennium Falcon holds the secrets. It's a really dope story.
Yeah.
But the whole point of this really long tangent is that we're talking about how like the vehicles themselves are like who would think to write a story about a vehicle, right? Like,
Yeah.
even like as crazy as the EU is for all this stuff, like there's a story about a specific vehicle. And like you're talking about like the Ecto One and the DeLorean, and I guess maybe the Normandy if you're into Mass Effect. Like, these
Sure,
ships are iconic because they represent something that's great, more than just like from point A to point B. Like, they have personality, they have an edge, they have so much history that's like just embedded in them. And so I absolutely love Star Wars vehicles.
Yeah,
um
and the other thing actually is, if you're thinking about like who would write a narrative about the ship, who would start an entire saga on them, right? Because we begin A New Hope with the Tantive 4, the rebellion blockade runner being pursued by that big Star Destroyer.
mhm.
And that is always, I mean, that will forever be iconic. The scale evoked there between those two ships, and
Oh, the opening shot, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and then it gets pulled into the tractor beam, and they're being boarded and everything. It's just Star Wars began with the ships. I think they recognize that they're such a great way to communicate scale and to communicate the sort of interstellar nature of the entire Star Wars universe. Because you think about like a Jedi Starfighter, and I want to talk about some of those sorts of vehicles, but they really are point A to point B. We're gonna go dog fighting. We need to get on General Grievous's ship. We're in the Clone Wars miniseries, and we got to go shoot down Asajj Ventress, and I'm flying my Jedi Starfighter. But you think about these bigger ships; these aren't just vehicles; they're locations where story happens, and I think that is really interesting because that's not, often it's a vehicles for transportation, but when they become places of interesting vignettes, like the going after Leia in the plans for the Death Star, then they become something even more special. And I think that's another really fun element about the ships too.
No, yeah. I'm thinking of. I didn't watch that much of Rebels, but one of the episodes I did see was where like they introduce into canon the idea of the B wing. I remember there's an
Yes.
episode where Hera goes to get like a retrieve, and like there's an entire episode just about. I think maybe more than one episode, but for sure it's at least one episode just about the concept of like the B wing. And like the B wing for me growing up was like it doesn't get that much screen time actually in the films. I think it only shows up like in small snippets in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing that vehicle and I'm like, what is that? Because that looks like it looks so different. And I'm like, is that there's like a certain like aura or kind of like mystery when it comes to like Star Wars, when it comes to like how small things become super popular, like Boba Fett, this character who's like super mysterious and like kind of goes out like a chump. But
Yeah.
like, no, he's badass. He's so cool because he's a strong silent type. Like we attribute like sometimes like less is more in a way. And with the B wing, like I remember seeing the B wing and I'm like what is that? Because you can see like the whole body rotates around the cockpit, like when they're like deploying and stuff. You know how the S foils on the X wing like open up and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember you see the B wings and they kind of rotate. I was like, what is going on with that? And then when we finally get that story in Rebels with like Hera, like it's like some kind of like it's a brand new design for like the rebellion and stuff. And like that's so cool. Like they can do stuff like that where like you introduce these like you said, they're like vehicles, but there's I guess the B-Wing's not as iconic, obviously, as all the lettered wings in Star Wars. Have you ever, on a tangent, have you ever seen Robot Chicken, Abram?
No, I haven't. I'm not a big fan of parody stuff like that, but maybe I should give it a chance.
Okay, because they run with the whole idea of like the letter
Yeah.
wings, and they have like one of them's like Q wing, like what's going on? And it's like if you can imagine, it's basically a circle with like a little thing sticking out.
Yeah.
But because the ship is not designed perfectly, like it's kind of spins around when it like goes off, and like it's
Yeah.
just like a big like donut shaped vehicle and just crashes into an asteroid. And it's funny like how like the rebellion has A wing, Y wing, X wing, B wing, and then like with the Empire, it's very kind of utilitarian. It's like very kind of like TIE, like the TIE Advance, TIE Bomber, TIE Interceptor, TIE Fighter. Like it's all. I like how they each have like their own kind of like theme. I guess you could say alphabet and TIE twin ion engine. And then like when you think of like especially like TIE fighters, like that famous roaring sound when it just kind of swoops over and you just hear like I can't do it properly, but kind of you get the idea. Like you hear that and you're like you're in for a good time. So like in Force Awakens, like when the TIE fight, when you hear like before you even see them, you can kind of like hear them in the distance, like that low rumbling of like we get that dope shot where like it's like the sun on the horizon and there's like a few like it has like that that wavy mirage look, kind of like when the heat hits.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see like the little outlines of these little H's, and then like the fat camera focuses and you see like a TIE fighter. It's like, oh, it's such a cool shot. And you just hear like like no matter how much time has passed, like Imperial like designs and engineering has not changed that much, where you hear that iconic sound and it just like elicits a reaction from me like oh, we're gonna get a cool dogfight. We're gonna get a cool dogfight right now.
Yes.
Go ahead. I thought you were gonna say something.
Yeah. Well, that scene I think might be, in my opinion, or I'd say actually just all of the Force Awakens might be some of the best aerial sequences we get in any of Star Wars. And the reason I like that is because it's about those small details. About, first of all, the sound design of Star Wars across the board is incredible, but the vehicles are so iconic. The sound of a TIE, the the sound of AT-AT cannons. These things are just you hear them and you know what we're talking about. But what Force Awakens does so well is it communicates the act of flying really well. One of my favorite, I'm someone who really likes tiny moments in Star Wars movies. So one of my favorite is when Rey is flying the Falcon and she grabs a lever on the center console and throws it forward, and she throws her entire body into it, and you
Uh-huh.
sort of get this sense that this is a big hulking thing to control, and the
Right.
way she's dancing it through the ruins on Jakku, that communicates this weight. But then you see towards the end of the film Poe, and he is just fucking people up when he's trying to destroy the planet killer, and then he flattens the S foils and flips 90 and flies right into the hole that Chewie blows after everything that transpires on the base. But there's just a great sense of weight and skill communicated through the various ways that these pilots are interacting with the ships. All of this stuff, seeing Han and Chewie in the cockpits, and they're flipping all these levers, or Anakin is just pirouetting through the sky. Like, it's all so great. It's those little details that I really love.
No, yeah, you're right. One of the I think the very first teaser we ever got for the Force Awakens opens with the X-wings flying over that lake. That's
Yeah.
like in that same scene you're talking about, and like I think one of the things that's really cool about that is we traditionally only see them like in space. We don't really see them doing stuff in atmosphere, like TIE fighters and X-wings, like they belong in space, right? That's like where they do all those, all their flying and stuff. And I remember seeing the teaser where we see the X-wings kind of gliding, like just barely above the surface of the lake. So we had like those little contrails with the little waves and stuff. And just seeing like that opening scene with all these X-wings, I was like what? Like what? Like again, we were talking about like how like the vehicles kind of have like a personality to them. Seeing that I think it's right after we see the stormtroopers in that black, like where the lights are going off in that transporter in the beginning. I'm trying to remember the exact trailer, but I remember seeing like the X-wings gliding over that lake. Like what a cool moment! Like that
Yeah.
formation, it's like very reminiscent of like if you ever seen like an aerial show with like the Blue Angels kind of thing. Where,
Yeah.
like you just see these X-wings just gliding like in unison perfectly over the lake. Like you're like, oh, they're about to do something really cool. And then like we we just saw the trailer for Eclipse like this last week.
Yeah.
And then those little, I don't know what they are. They might be Mandalorian starfighters. I have no idea what they kind of look like they could be.
The
But
High
like these,
Republic ships. Yeah.
yes, the High Republic ships. They
Yeah.
have like these like purple like afterburners, like exhaust, like some kind of purple or light pink or something like that. But just seeing like the like when like at the end, like when they're just like flying one after another, and like all these Trade Federation ships, like I have no idea what's going on, but like I'm sold because like
Yeah.
it's just freaking like he's the Trade Federation ship like design is very iconic. Even though it's not that great, but when you see it, there's no mistaking what it is, right? You see that the Trade Federation ships, the design's a little different. They have like ribs now, like kind of like ribbed edges or something, but it's still Trade Federation. And you just see these ships coming out, and it's like you don't have to know exactly what the story is, but just the visual context. Like, okay, there's a conflict with the Trade Federation, and these are probably maybe like High Republic Jedi starfighters, maybe could be something like that. But just without any words, no story, no anything, you see what's going on, and it clicks into place. Trade Federation, something's going on.
Yeah.
And I think Star Wars is like one of the few like franchises where you can see they have the thing too. Like it's very funny where like for some reason like the lightsabers red is associated with Sith and bad, right? But when it comes to the ships, the TIE fighters fire green shots
Yeah.
and the X-wings fire red shots. And I remember as a kid that used to be so confusing for me because I associated green lightsaber with like Luke and red lightsaber with Darth Vader. And it's just those like you're talking about, just like the shot. Like I know it's done for the audience's benefit, so you know who's shooting at who, right? The
Yeah.
good guys into that bad. But like you see those visual cues of like the vehicles and like the combat, and without dialogue, you know exactly what's going on. Like you don't have to have like it doesn't have to be like spelled out for you. You don't have to have your hand held. You just see what's going on, and your mind just fills in the blanks. Like, okay, this is the situation we're in. And I think Star Wars is one of the few franchises where you can see that kind of stuff going on, and you're not lost immediately about what's happening on screen.
Yeah, Star Wars has always maintained a great visual clarity, which is one of the things I really appreciate about it, just on the whole. But if you're talking about sort of the visual, something you were mentioning before we started recording that I think would be good to transition into is sort of the canonical visual progression of these vehicles, which is, I think, one of the smartest things that the prequels did on a world building level. The ways that they, retrofitted a sort of canon wherein, the stormtrooper armor advanced from the Mark II clone armor, or the Phase 2 clone armor, which came from the Phase 1, and so on and so forth, and that transitions into the vehicles then also. That's most clearly, of course, in the clone army vehicles, into the Imperial army vehicles, and then into the sequel trilogy also. Although I have to say, one of the things that I found disappointing about the sequel trilogy is the way that there isn't that bigger progression.
This is a palette swap.
Yeah, it really is just a palette swap, especially because, you know, frankly, as much or perhaps more time has passed between, 6 and 7 as
Like
there is
30
between,
years, yeah.
3 and 4. That's a pretty big period of time where we could have advanced. But bearing, excluding that progression, I think is so fascinating to watch. And especially, you start to factor in Old Republic vehicles also, and you can really track how we get to that TIE fighter, how we get to that X-Wing.
Yeah, the Sith Starfighter. Yeah. When Kodor, when you have like those, when you're flying in between planets, you get this little mini game, right, with the little turret on the Ebony Hawk and stuff. And you can see like the Sith Starfighters, and it's basically just if you took a TIE wing and you just flattened it further, basically, just outward. The wings are outward, and it has like the same like design, same still like engineering philosophy, where it's like they're quick, they're nimble, but it doesn't take much to take them out, right? That's been traditional. They're like glass cannons that basically. So it's kind of like I like how that's kind of like the motif, or kind of like the theme of like the Sith, or like whoever the Empire is at the time. Like we're focusing we don't care about the shields because our fighters are ultimately expendable. It's really about just trying to cause as much damage at the expense of like having low shielding. And I think canonically, or at least in the books, like the X-Wings always had a little bit more like countermeasures, or at least a little bit more like defense. And it's kind of like their ship technology is kind of a reflection of their philosophy, where like each kind of person kind of does matter in a way, at least on the Republic side. Like I know we kind of get a lot of people take issue with the whole Rose thing with like, what was it she says, we don't win, but we win by you know what I'm talking about, right? She says something about,
yes,
we win by saving lives, not by like taking, something like that.
Yeah, when she stops Finn from sacrificing himself.
Yeah, and you can kind of see how like that. One of the EU books I read. There's this time travel weird situation where they're in the Old Republic. A ship that's like fleeing from a battle has its hyperdrive damaged, and that causes it to, like, when it goes into light speed with the damaged hyperdrive, it actually ends up like time traveling to the future somehow, because they explain it away as like the hyperdrive, light speed and all that stuff going on. And one of the Old Republic, one of the Old Republic Jedi shows up like in the prequel time, and long story short, he teams up with like the Jedi of that era, and he's like, oh, like these TIE fighters or whatever, it's nice to see that Sith like technology, or Sith engineering doesn't change that much. That it's still like very easy to just take these guys out because they're focused on causing damage, not really like saving their own lives and stuff. So I thought it's kind of funny about that. But yeah, as we mentioned before, seeing when we get Attack of the Clones, we get that moment where, at the end, after Yoda says like victory, you say like, no, not a victory, begun, the Clone Wars have, right? And then we have like a dope shot of like these massive platoons of like clone troopers like just lining up.
Yeah.
And like, even without, I saw that movie when I was like 11 or 12, and even then, just seeing the clone troopers is like light bulb moment. These are going to be the stormtroopers in the future, because it's all white plasticky armor, so it's like not too far to see you don't have to see that far ahead to be like, oh, that's where the stormtroopers come from. They're like, these clones at first, right? And then they become like, what do you call it? Inscripted? No, it's not the word I'm looking for. But they become, not clones. But seeing like we have like when they show up and they have the I forget the name of that ship. That one that's low, that flies really low with the slanted wings. It's like a carrier with the little two balls on the side with the cannons.
Yeah, it's the LAAT, I believe. The LAT carriers. Let me look it up.
Yeah, yes. You're right. Now I remember the terminology from Battlefront 2. You're right.
Yeah.
And we see like those vehicles, and I know for a lot of people, like, it's kind of like, okay, they just wanted to sell toys. That's why we have like all these variants of all these vehicles and all that stuff. But it's so cool, like when you start to see like, we also see like the one I mentioned last time, we talked about last time, where like that one looks like a beetle, kind of with like a big cannon on its back, and like that's clearly like an early precursor to like the AT-AT and all that stuff later on. and just seeing like that visual storytelling where it's not spoken to us. It's not like, like let's give an exposition like, oh, like Master Yoda, these are the new, like we don't get
Yeah.
introductions to the ships and stuff. It's just like, because you can see the same design elements that are in these that are reflected in the original trilogy and stuff. Seeing I remember last when we watched Revenge of the Sith, and on Kashyyyk we see a lot of those walkers, the ones on their two legs. You told me the name last time, I can't remember. It's like a platform
Yeah,
on
the
two legs.
ATRTs.
There you go.
Yeah,
It's
from the
basically a
ATSTs.
platform on two legs.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not that hard to see, oh, they're going to transition to the ATSTs later on. And just seeing that whole design, like, of these ships and where they end up going, like, no other franchise does that kind of stuff. So it's cool seeing, I love seeing that stuff. I'm trying to remember, I think in the Thrawn trilogy of the books, there is like a new TIE variant that's introduced. It's supposed to be like, they're exclusive to Thrawn species, the Chiss, I think they're called.
Yeah.
And they have like a very specific kind of like, because I've seen like concept art for it where it's like a TIE fighter that has like very oblong, like rounded out edges and shapes and stuff. It looks really cool. But Abram, take it from here because I don't know where to go from here.
No, I think that's all great. I also loved that as a kid, trying to pick these things out. Say, okay, here's the ATTE. It loses a couple legs, gets a little bit taller, and it becomes the AT-AT. And that stuff is very fun because it cements why I think the prequels are so useful, because they are not just telling what happened to Anakin as he became Darth Vader and, Obi-Wan and Yoda and everybody who moves forward. It's about, here's what the Star Wars world was before. And it's very smart, very economical, very practical design. And that's why it's so easy for me to appreciate, because another facet of the vehicles I love is that we see a lot of repairs being done. These things break down. They have to be fixed. You got to tune them. You have to care for them. And there's such a great attention to detail in how they're presented. And so I think the fact that you just watch them grow and change feeds into that idea. And so they become very personal. They become staples of the universe. And I guess what I want to know then is what some of your favorites are. Because I'll go first. I think my very favorite is probably the ARC 170 Starfighter. Mm-hmm. Now, it's very cool because I like the idea of the multiple pilots in the ship, manning the gun, flying, everything. I think that's great. But I have a very personal reason for liking this ship too, because when I was a kid, I had no money, but I really wanted the Slave One, or as it's now known, Boba Fett's starship. I really wanted that Lego set. I couldn't afford it, so I saved up a ton of money because it was like $70, which is an unfathomable amount of money for me to have when I was 9, 10, whatever. And so I finally save it up, like working or doing chores around the house, weeding my mom's garden, doing whatever over weeks to get the money. Go to the store and they have no Slave One. But what they do have was an ARC 170 Starfighter, which was about as expensive, not what I wanted, but I had no patience to wait. I was like, I'm not leaving here without a Lego set. And so building that and really getting a feel for its components and then seeing that represented in, Revenge of the Sith and everything, I just came to really love that ship a lot. So that's probably one of, if not my favorite Star Wars vehicle.
No, yeah, the ARC 170 Starfighter, which is like, it's clearly a precursor for the X-Wing. You just clip off the middle wings and just make the ship overall smaller and ditch one of the pilots. But yeah, you're right. When I think of that ship, it actually reminds me a lot of I forget the real life designation, but in World War II they call them flying fortresses, which was this large like carrier that there's this pilots in the front obviously, but then there is like two guns. There's two like big anti-aircraft guns on the sides, and it's what kind of like that scene in A New Hope where they escape the Death Star and they're chased by the TIE fighters. And you know how like Han goes down and then Luke goes up the other one, and at the moment where they're like moving, they're shifting around physically, right? Like trying to like the dogfight kind of thing. That's the ship I'm describing is based off of, is what that specific scene is based off, where you have the
Yeah.
called the I forget the military designation, but it's the nickname is a flying fortress, and so what it has like two on the bottom and on the top. It has like two different compartments for two like gunners and stuff, and then you have on the side these smaller like kind of like portholes where you can have like machine guns inside. And the Arc 170 reminds me a lot of that, because you said you
Yeah.
have like the multiple fighters where like each person has like a different role and stuff, and like cause it's a very like diverse and very like weapons heavy system. And so I do remember like, in Battlefront 2, like I didn't really use that one that much.
Yeah.
I've always liked the more nimble, like the V-Wing and like the TIE Interceptor. Anything that's like fast, where they can do like the rolls and just like lay down a lot of suppressive fire. Like those are my go-to vehicles. I don't like the, because I think the Arc 170 is basically it's kind of like a, what do you call it? A jack of all trades, right? It's not meant to.
Yeah,
be,
it's just standard Republic.
it doesn't
unit.
excel in any one thing, but it can do kind of everything, just kind of okay.
Did you
Yeah.
play a lot of those space battles, by the way?
We didn't talk about this last time, but I left out. I played a lot of Rogue Squadron in 64.
Sure, yeah.
And I did actually. I played. I think when it came to Battlefront 2, I did more space battles than I did actually on the ground fighting.
Oh, interesting. Because for me, I was just never very good at it, so it always annoyed
I
me.
see.
But so what I would do, and I think part of the reason why I came to like appreciate going back to that detail, the way the ships are constructed, is because what I would do is I would get in the LAAT gunship or the drop ship and fly it into the hangar of the opposing capital ship. And then it became became a spawn point. So then you could get out and then you could sabotage the interior of the ship, take down the shields from the inside, the engine, and all of that. So that's how I would always play,
okay.
because I actually didn't like. 'Cause I was never coordinated enough to do the space battles, so I would just fly and sabotage their ship. So that was always fun. Complete tangent, but
Yeah, actually, you know what? I remember my philosophy for that specific. Like, I would play a lot of Conquest. I love Conquest. That was my favorite mode. But
yeah,
I remember whenever we do fly into the enemy hangar, go for like where they have like the thing where they have like the shields or whatever, like in that little room in the back where you just bomb that one
Yeah.
engine room or whatever, and then fly outside and take out the other systems and stuff. Like that was my go-to like strategy each time, and it always worked. So
yeah,
uh, but yeah, my favorite ship, one of my favorite ships, of course, you mentioned was your first choice, the Slave One.
yeah,
Even though it doesn't get that much I know Attack of the Clones is like one of the most like cringiest, kind of like least liked of the series.
yeah,
But I think one of the best scenes in the whole series is that asteroid dogfight with Obi-Wan chasing this, because you get
Sure.
that awesome moment where it's just like right on his heels and just like blasting, and then how dope is the sound design of the death charges, Abram? The little, it's like it's quiet. You see it, and then you see the explosion first, and then you hear the sound after, and it's like that was like I remember seeing that in theaters. I'm like, that is the coolest sounding like weapon or like attack I've ever seen. Is you see that boom, like, oh, that was
Yeah.
so dope. Those death charges, that whole sequence in the asteroid when he's like chasing him above Geonosis, and he's just trying to he does a thing that we call it the Slave One does later, where like it attaches itself to floating debris, which I love that. I like to think that's where he got the idea later on, maybe, but like where Obi-Wan finally like sticks to an asteroid and like did we get him, or like no one could have survived that, and they just like fly away, and I'm like, I love that, because then in Empire Strikes Back we had the same thing where Han attaches to one of the Star Destroyers and they float with the debris, and in the debris is just the Slave One just like floating, and then you just see it ignite. Like I was like, okay, that's where you learned that trick. He must have. But that whole moment, the whole dogfight. But also, I like the idea of how the Slave One works, where you board it like kind of like laying down. That's like it's really unique. Where like it looks like you could fly it like laying down, like the design of the shape of the ship, because most vehicles tend to have like a sleek, flat design, right? The Slave One is unique, where it actually flies kind of like standing up, which you would think is not very aerodynamic, but because they're in space, aerodynamics don't really matter anyways. But I love the idea of how like to like turn it on, like you have to basically land like laying down, and taking off is like laying down too. Like it's such a weird, it kind of reminds me of like the space shuttle, like how they're pointed up at the sky, and like astronauts have to like sit back and lay down. Like I don't know. It's the only ship that I know in Star Wars that has that scheme or that kind of like
Yeah,
design.
I can't
And
think of another really.
yeah, I like how it's just not the most I guess utilitarian design. It's really cool, the whole laying down stuff, and then like pops up, and like you got the cannons on the bottom, cannons on the side. It's a really dope design. And then it's you know what? I'm not someone who gets riled up about changes. I know some people like take issue with it. Slave One, I mean, I don't really see the issue really because that's just always what it's been.
Yeah.
But if they change it, like it's not worth getting riled up for. But it being like the fire spray, not as cool sounding as Slave One. Definitely better than being called Boba Fett's ship because that's very generic as hell. But I don't know. I know in the Star Wars scene, like when that happened like a couple months ago, there were like a lot of people that were riled up about that. It was just nonsensical stuff, anyways. But Slave One is one of my favorites. I have another one, but I'll wait for you to go next.
I think another one I love is from the Clone Wars micro series. It's Asajj Ventress's ship, because if you want to talk about unique ships, this one is really cool. The way it again is like a pseudo vertical ship, but it has these two almost like bat wings looking things that flap up and down.
Okay.
To make like a crescent moon shaped ship. And I love that for similar reasons to what you're saying about Boba Fett's ship, because it's very atypical. Because as we're talking about how you can see the continuity of these ships across sagas, it does lend to a sort of idea of what the Star Wars ship is. The body, the wings, it's kind of archetypal. There's a lot of diversity there, but you kind of know what to expect. You can look at a ship that's a Star Wars ship and say, hey, that's a Star Wars ship. But with Asajj Ventress's Starfighter, it's very unique, and that uniqueness is very cool to me.
I'm trying. I don't think I've ever seen her. I don't think I've ever seen her ship. I don't think I've ever seen. Is it like kind of like Dooku's like solar sailor thing with like the weird like metallic parachute thing in the back, or no?
Kind of, yes. Here, I'm gonna put this picture on screen. I'm also going to put it in our Discord chat so you can have a look at this.
They're gonna be like, "What's this?" with no context.
Here it is. Yeah, because we need to educate everybody about this ship, and it's on its way. Incoming
Star Wars PSA.
And it's we're doing it. We're coming in hot like Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, landing half of General Grievous's flagship. But there is a picture of Asajj Ventress's ship, and you all at home will see that too, as Andrew's looking at it. But these really unique and off the beaten path ship designs are things that I really appreciate from Star Wars' vehicles.
No, yeah. I still haven't seen it, but I'll see it. I'll look at it soon.
Yes,
soon.
It'll show up eventually.
All right. Now my next one. I don't know if you can really call it a ship per se, but I, as a kid and even now, completely enamored with the concept of the speeder bike. The speeder bike
Definitely.
Is probably like the coolest thing that I think is almost feasible in design and practical. Like if there's anything from Star Wars that could ever become real, I think the speeder bike is the one that has like the best chance of becoming real. Because as a kid, being a kid, Abram, like you require visual stimulation to really get your interest.
Yeah.
That scene of them flying through like the California redwoods, where that Endor where it's supposed to take place, and just getting on like this. Not only is it like a fast bike, but it's like floating. And you get like the handlebars, and they like lean in close, and they have like freaking cannons on the speeder bikes. Like that is the coolest design ever. It's almost like for me, that was like what the hoverboard from Back to the Future was for other people. Like seeing that design of there's no wheels, there's nothing. It just floats, and you're just flying through the forest. And like, I'm surprised they haven't made that like an actual ride in Disneyland yet for like all the Star Wars stuff, because that's like the very first thing I would do is make a ride for the speeder bike. And then I love that scene in, again, surprisingly, a lot of scenes in Attack of the Clones I actually do like, is when Anakin leaves the settlement to go look for his mother, and we get the Duel of the Fates again, and it's just that dope scene with the sunset and him just riding through the desert, like the open desert on the speeder bike. Like, like he's on a mission. I'm like that particular like scene is fresh in my mind. Very like it's like as Star Wars gets. Such a dope scene, even though like there's not much going on. But the concept of him just like going off, like crawling across the desert, like he's on a mission, he's all pissed off and stuff. He's like, I'm gonna go save my mom and stuff. Like the concept of the speeder bike is something that I wish more than anything, even more than a lightsaber, even because because lightsabers aren't dangerous and stuff. But a speeder bike is freaking cool, man. I don't know how many designs of speeder bikes there is. I know in Shadows of the Empire, the N64 game, there's a whole level where you're doing like I don't know if there's swoop bikes. I don't know what the difference is, swoop bikes, speeder bikes. But there's like a racing section where you're just going through like Tatooine on these dope ass like speeder bikes. And anytime Star Wars does like the sense of speed thing with like pod racers or with speeder bikes, like it's such a visual treat to have that kind of moments where you're just living almost like in the universe in that moment, seeing that stuff. I love speeder bikes, and it's not practical for like a military point, really. I think because you're just exposed, you're just on a piece of metal, and like you can easily be picked off. But it's like one of my favorite designs of like any kind of vehicle. It is a vehicle, right? It gets you from point A to point B, so therefore it's a vehicle. So
the speeder bikes are awesome. Now I have to say that you're absolutely incorrect about one thing there. These are not less dangerous than lightsabers, and that's why they're so cool. The reason I love the speeder bike sequence in Return of the Jedi is they communicate how wild these things are to ride so well in a bunch of different ways. Whether that's one of I think the best comedic shots in all of Star Wars being Wicket holding onto the handlebars, his legs are flung up behind him because it's just going so fast, or when Luke cuts the front off of one, it goes just flying out, and he's spinning and trying to hold on. Like these things move, like they move, and I think that's what's super cool about them. That's a great sequence. By the way, Endor, probably the worst place to have a speeder bike because of all the trees.
So many obstacles. And I always found that funny too, that they would use, that's like their primary mode of transportation on that planet. Yeah. And it's just like who thought this through? Like either there must be like, they must have like carved out lanes, like practical lanes. Maybe like in the movie they take a shortcut because it's like a time sensitive matter.
Yeah.
I don't know. But okay, when I said less dangerous than a lightsaber, I mean a lightsaber's only practical use is for destruction, whereas a speeder bike has weapons, but it's mostly just transport. So that's what I meant. You're right. It is dangerous, especially on Endor. Like you would have to be able to see at the speed you're going. You would have to be able to have like Anakin like reflexes and dodging stuff.
Now, there's another very cool speeder bike sequence. And again, it's from the Clone Wars micro series. I don't know if you remember this. There's this fight that takes place in the city. And the badass bounty hunter Dirge is there.
Oh, yes.
And Dirge has an army of assassin droids. And Obi-Wan has an army of clones. And they are all on speeder bikes. And they joust on them. They all have both the assassin droids and the clones and Dirge, and then Obi-Wan has a lightsaber. They all have lances, and you see this wide shot of them all put their lances down, and they all fly at each other, and they just skewer each other, and it's crazy. That is, I think, the Endor is always going to be more iconic, but that scene from the Clone Wars micro series is so much more badass. That is an amazing sequence.
Like it's like jousting or something, right?
Yeah,
I do remember. Fun. I think I'm like 90% sure. I think they re-canonized Dirge. I think in the comics. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, they reintroduced him in the comics, so therefore, by extension, he is now canon again. So that's really cool. This was like a year ago, I think. It was like some kind of like I forgot how exactly, but like they introduced Dirge again. So he's
awesome.
Cool. Yeah, I was the idea. He was like invincible, right? Or like he couldn't die or something, except for like he had to get hurled into the sun or a star.
What happens in Clone Wars, and he starts to reform at the end, so we don't actually even know how to kill him unless it's in the comics of the EU. But he's like this gross, like sinewy muscle man under his armor. So we see Obi-Wan like cut his arms off, and then we see them start to regrow. But how they finally take him out in the Clone Wars show is all of these ARC troopers shoot him with like zip lines, and then they electrify him, and then Obi-Wan gets like swallowed up by Dirge's like muscle goo and everything, then he uses the Force to pop Dirge like a piece of
Nice.
bubble gum from the inside. He's like such a weird alien, and I'm so glad that if we ever got a live action Dirge, that would be wild.
I like his design. I like the metal dreads thing he has going on with his like armor. I love his design. It reminds me. It's very reminiscent of like if you combine the Predator with like General Grievous in a way. Like, I
Yeah.
like that design. So, but back on topic. Anyways, so oh no, that's your turn because I just talked about speeder bikes. Go ahead.
Then I'm gonna break the rules and I'm going to say an animal, but this animal is only used as a vehicle, and that is Boga from Revenge of the Sith.
Is that the iguana thing?
Yes, that is the
The,
big.
ooh,
Yes, he is the big iguana man that
that's dope.
Obi-Wan rides, in as he is facing off against Grievous in another fantastic Star Wars vehicle, being Grievous's wheel bike.
That thing is dope. Yes,
Yes,
yes, yes.
that is just a great exchange. That entire sequence of the man versus the machine, both, and then that motif carries it out into their vehicles with
Mm-hmm.
Boga and the wheel bike. Revenge of the Sith has awesome vehicles across the board, but the real one being the wheel bike, and then the honorary vehicle being Boga, both are fantastic.
Is that the name of that specific creature, or is that the name of its species?
Now, I believe his name is Boga.
Okay.
I will do a bit of fact checking on that. I had a Lego Boga and Grievous wheel bike, which is another part of the reason why I really like those too. A lot of my favorite vehicles have some sort of personal memory associated with them, usually pertaining to Lego. So
No, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense that the things that would resonate with you most have like some kind of memory or childhood like reverence tied to them. What I like about that scene is right immediately right after while we're looking for it, when Grievous gets his like lightsabers and arms cut off, is when he goes into that weird like cockroach mode. It's like kind of crawling over it, and then he like flips over into the cockpit. See, like really cool, like just like he puts his legs in, and then pulls his upper body up.
yeah,
And I like how like it can roll, but then also has like legs for when you don't want it to roll, and like it can like scale like angles and stuff. So it's like it's designed for like speed, but it's also like designed for like terrain. I like how he has like that shift between like wheel mode and kind of like crawling mech mode. Like it's a really cool design, honestly.
yeah.
I agree.
Boga is the name. Veridactyl is the creature.
Veridactyl. That sounds dope.
Yeah.
Although with a name like that, I expected it to have wings at least, but it
Yeah.
doesn't. So
Any other
it looks
vehicles?
like it looks like a giant. It looks like you combine a parrot with like an iguana. That's what it looks
Yes.
like to me.
He's very cool, and then he gets fucking killed by Commander Cody.
Like
Lame.
blast them. Like no. Yeah, that sucks.
Any other vehicles amongst your favorites you want to shout out?
Um, I you know what? There's that really dope one in Clone Wars where it's basically just a bunch of missiles strapped to two wheels. It was a Hellfire.
Yes.
It's like a little tank, but it's not. Again, that design of like offense over defense because it has like almost no armor whatsoever. It's just two giant slanted wheels and then a whole pack of like missiles and a cockpit. That's literally all it is. I want to say it's like Hellfire, something like that. Kind of.
Hailfire droid, yes.
There you go. That thing is so cool. Like even
Yeah.
though it's only, I think we only see it. I don't think we see it in Revenge of the Sith, but I know for sure because I played the Clone Wars game that came with packed with Tetris on Xbox. My cousin had that.
Yeah.
The double-sided game or whatever. And I remember using that thing was so cool. The freaking like it's just it reminds me of like a Droideka if you just ballooned it into an actual like ship. Where
Yeah.
you have these massive. It reminds me. There's like a Twisted Metal character design that's very similar, where it's just two giant wheels and a platform in the character. But here we have like these two massive wheels and then like a little like. It reminds me of those. What would you call those? In the old days, like the Chinese had like they would fire like those boxes with a bunch of like rockets. That's kind of what it looks like,
Yeah.
sort of. And it looks really dope. I think we only see it there and then never again in any other media. I mean, outside of like the movies, we see it obviously in Clone Wars stuff, but we don't see it like it doesn't come back at all again. Maybe it doesn't seem practical. It sounds like I mentioned, it sounds like it's just kind of like a suicide run, like do as much damage as you can, and like because they blow up very easily as we see in Clone Wars. I think they blow up very easily. So
Yeah.
I love the design of that. And it's a cool name, Hellfire or Hellfire droid. That's a dope name. So So yeah, that's. I mean, I love TIE fighters, I love X-wings, but like those three are the ones like if I had to rate like what are the coolest looking or like the most fun, if I could fun to use, Slave One, speeder bike, Hellfire droid.
Nice. The last one I'd shout out is the Ghost, which is the main ship in Rebels that Hera flies. The Ghost is really great. I think, like the best vehicles, like your Millennium Falcons, your Ebon Hawks, and things, it becomes a hub for storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
But what's super cool about the Ghost is it has a detachable ship on top, the Phantom. And I think this is a really cool idea because we learn the Millennium Falcon, the notch missing from the front of it was like an escape pod.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But what the Phantom on the Ghost is cool because it's a detachable little ship you can take down to do missions and has some light weaponry, but then it can come back. It's not a one and done. I think the idea of having this little ship nestled into your bigger ship is really cool, and the Ghost just ends up having so much personality because of the characters on it. I really love Rebels. I think it really does a lot to expand the entire original trilogy canon in that period in really smart and interesting ways. And I love that entire crew. And the Ghost for me really does rival the Millennium Falcon.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But also, I think Rebels rivals the original trilogy in terms of quality. When you get into season 2, for people at home, because I was one of these fools who watched the first 10 episodes and was like, this show's for kids, and then stopped. When you get to that back half of season 1, or if you just jump into season 2, maybe we'll watch like some recaps. That's some of the best Star Wars content that's ever existed. Rebels is really good. It's really good.
Did you ever watch? Because I've seen all of Clone Wars. I haven't seen the last season they did where they like added to Disney Plus. I still haven't seen that season. Like the last season I saw was the thing with Yoda's like he confronts Darth Bane and he goes through like the what if scenario of like the alternate outcome or whatever.
Yeah.
And I seen parts of Rebels. I never finished it. I just saw like the Ahsoka Vader fight and like stuff like that. But did you ever see the Resistance one? Whatever it was, that weird cell shaded looking one? Did you ever see that one?
I haven't. I have heard because I've heard that one actually does skew just towards kids. Now that could be incorrect, but I have not seen any of Star Wars Resistance.
I wanted to watch it, but there's something about the animation that it just turns me off. I really don't like the design of how it looks. It reminds me of, I don't know if you ever saw that Tron series, the miniseries on Disney Channel. They had that Tron miniseries.
Yeah.
It has that weird, like, I don't know if cell shade is the right term. I don't think that term gets used way too much. Like
it's like very pastel almost.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Sable, the game Sable. But like, yeah. But Sable looks way cooler. But I'm like, so I was wondering if like I was hoping if you could tell me like if I was missing out by skipping on that. But I guess you can't really tell me much about that.
Bad Batch is what I need to watch next.
You haven't seen Bad Batch?
No.
What? Okay, I've only seen half of the first season. It's good. It's good.
I want to watch it, but when I was finally getting into Rebels, that conflicted with Bad Batch, and I wanted to get through Rebels first. But now we've got Book of Boba Fett around the corner, so after Book of Boba Fett comes Bad Batch, and then we'll be all caught up.
Well, that's good because Bad Batch is the cameos are very Rebels heavy. Like a lot of the characters they do, like if you haven't like some characters should return from Rebels, and I'm kind of just like, well, I would probably care if I actually finish Rebels, like about this character. So it's good that you're going it that way. What was my point? Oh, that's right. Yeah, because Resistance, I think it focuses mostly on like I think they're pilots, right? I think that's the main characters are pilots.
Yeah.
So it's just going down that whole ship avenue stuff. But that's funny that the Ghost is as big as an influence to you as a Millennium Falcon. That's. I guess I really have to finish Rebels because
yeah, I think the Millennium Falcon is great. But the Millennium Falcon, I think, has been built up to what it is because it gets the EU books. It gets Solo is as much an origin story of the Millennium Falcon as it is an origin story for Han Solo. It's pivotal in the narrative of The Force Awakens. Like it has been propped up as the Star Wars ship. But I just think that the quality of Rebels and the storytelling opportunities we get aboard the Ghost, its design, it just facilitates a lot of really great stuff.
Okay, that's fair enough. I think I like the Ebon Hawk a little bit more, but I'm biased because I love KOTOR. So
I like the Ebon Hawk, but I always walk into it and then get lost and go the wrong way. It takes me like twice as
Yes.
like trying to
Yes.
find the fucking just trying to get to the cockpit so I can go to a different planet. I'm like, I have to pull up my mini map like 3 times to figure out where I'm trying to go.
And then by the time you have it memorized, like the game is almost over
Yeah.
anyway. So it's like, what was the point? But yeah, you're right. You're right.
Hey, when the remake comes out, I'll be all set. I'll know which way to go.
There you go. Or mini spoilers. Ebon Hawk appears again in KOTOR 2. So if you ever do play that
Yeah.
one, then you'll be set. You'll be ready for that. But yeah, the Ebon Hawk for me, because of like the whole stuff we go through terrorists and all that stuff in KOTOR, like when you finally get to see the Ebon Hawk, like it's the only ship that can get past the blockades and everything. Like it's very much basically just like it's almost the same name. It's a bird. It's another Millennium Falcon,
Yeah.
Ebon Hawk. It's another bird themed ship, so it is what it is. But there you go.
There we go. Anything else on the topic of vehicles you want to touch on? The only thing I would say is that it is my New Year. Well, I've got much more important New Year's resolutions than this, but it is amongst my New Year's resolutions to play the Rogue Squadron trilogy because I haven't.
Oh,
That is that now that I've played KOTOR 1, I think that the particularly Rogue Squadron 2, Rogue Leader, yeah, because Rebel Strike is 3. Rogue Leader is one of the last major holes in my Star Wars video game library. So, gotta play that.
yeah.
Gotta play that.
I think 2 and 3 are on GameCube, right?
Yeah, 2 was a GameCube launch title. 3 was also on GameCube, and it had on-foot missions, which I know people were a little bit more mixed on. And then, of course, 1 was on N64. But
Abram, have you ever played the Star Wars arcade game where you can like do the Death Star run in like at the mall or arcade? Have you seen it though? You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. I miss out on all of these things. There's a Halo like an arcade game that I've never played. I've never played Mario Kart Grand Prix. I've never played the Luigi's Mansion one. I haven't played any of the Star Wars ones. I haven't played any of this cool arcade stuff.
Oh man, you gotta play. Did you play Squadrons?
I did play Squadrons, yes.
What did you think about that?
I think that I'm not good at it, is what I think about Squadrons. But it's very cool. I played about half of it. And then I said, I would much rather play this because it came out when I was in college. And I have a PSVR, but I didn't bring it to school with me because why would I use my PSVR at college enough to justify the 97 cables that it requires to use?
Oh, come on. It's like 3 or 4. Okay, okay.
But so I played like half of it, and then I came back home, and then I was gonna play it in PSVR, but that game makes me really motion sick in VR. I can't play more than like the first 2 stages, so
You gotta get your VR legs.
I do. I got them with Vader Immortal, which by the way is awesome.
I need to play. I actually have it downloaded on my. I haven't played it. I haven't had time for it, but I actually have it on my solid state drive. I need to play it soon. So.
It's awesome, and you can beat it. You can beat it in an evening if you want to.
Squadrons for me. Squadrons. When I saw Squadrons when it was first announced, I'm like, this is exactly what I got VR for because
Yeah.
like VR is at its best when you're doing like the whole like cockpit experience, right?
Yes.
When you're like kind of just sitting down and you're just doing stuff from like a sitting down position, not like waving your hands and crap and stuff like that. It's being the cockpit experience is what VR excels at.
Yeah.
Because it feels a lot like if I'm assuming at some point in your life you must have been to Disneyland, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you've been on the Star Tours ride then, right? What? Oh
Never
my
gotten to go on Star Tours.
Oh
I
my
don't-
god.
I
Okay.
don't see the problem is I've only visited Disney a very select number of times. And what park is Star Tours in?
The Disneyland that's in Anaheim, California. It's
Yeah.
also in the Magic Kingdom in Florida.
Yeah, because I've only gone to it in Florida, but I've never gone to go on Star Tours. We go to Epcot and then we go to Disneyland proper. But I'm there with my entire extended family, and it's a whole democracy about what rides we're going to go on. And Star Tours has never been one of them.
Oh, Abram, you gotta experience as a Star Wars fan. You gotta experience Star Tours. The Squadrons VR is essentially what Star Tours feels like. It's just like if you took that ride and just took it home with you. Is basically what Squadrons VR is. The whole like looking around the cockpit of the TIE fighter, like you see the pedals like where your feet are supposed to rest, and then like in the X-wing, there's actually a button that triggers the
Targeting computer. Yeah.
Yes, it's so it's like I don't play online because you will get destroyed. I cannot survive online. But playing like the campaign missions from like just doing the campaign story like from VR is like it's like almost a spiritual experience if you've ever been into like super into like the vehicles and like just
Yeah,
piloting and like go like you do get motion sickness because you're like hurling and spinning through space and
that's
stuff like it's
that's when it gets me.
because you do like you're like which way is up like you do get kind of like discombobulated and stuff like that, so I get it, but absolutely play it in, even if you only do one mission, just play it in VR, Abram.
Yeah.
Like, you will be forever transformed.
What
Like,
I
absolutely.
played was amazing. I just couldn't play very much of it, which made me very, very sad.
Just do like
So,
one mission like a week or something. Like I'll do just do one level a week and then
yeah.
yeah. So, anyways, that's all I got for. So
Yeah, I think I've about reached my vehicle limit too. I think we covered a lot of very good ground here today. But if unless you have anything else to say, Andrew, I suppose we can go ahead and wrap this one up.
I mean, the only thing that I can think of is well, okay. What is your when it comes to like the Star Wars vehicles? We talked about like your favorite ones, but
Yeah.
what of the traditional types? Like, if you had to choose one per faction, like for Clone Wars, CIS, Rebellion. I mean,
Yeah.
Republic, Rebellion, CIS, Empire. What is your favorite from each of the factions?
So, Arc 170 Starfighter for
Right,
Republic.
makes sense.
The Vulture droids for the CIS, which are awesome.
Really,
I love how their legs can flip down and they can kind of like walk
crawl
about.
around.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think that's a
okay.
super cool design. When it comes to the Rebellion, I just kind of lump the Rebellion and the Resistance together because they basically have the same ships. Um, man, the iconography of the X-wing is almost impossible to beat.
Fair enough.
But I'm a big A-wing fan. So I think I'm going to
Okay.
give it to the A-wing. I love how compact it is and how zippy it is. I think that's really great. And then if I had to flip over to the Empire, I'm a big fan of, well, it's not standard issue, but I love Darth Vader's tie, a little bit wider, a little bit narrower.
The
I
tie
think
advance.
that's
Okay.
really cool, the tie advance. But the tie defender is also very imposing with it's three wings that are almost look like six, and it's just this sharp, pointed,
Uh
aerodynamic killer. I think if I have to go general, I'd say tie defender is what I'd give it to there.
Okay, that's fair. Um, Real quick, Republic V Wing because I already talked about it. I love the design and I love how the like it has like it's like when you talk about like the A Wing, but kind of like
Yeah.
mirrors a little bit with the Tie Fighter in a way. For I love the clutch ones. What are they called? The ones for the CIS. It looks like a
Yes.
I
I think
can't
it's
remember,
called the
Tri
Tri.
Fighters. The Tri Fighters, right?
Yeah, this is Tri-Fighter. Yes, you're totally right.
I love that design because I love like when it spins, you can't tell which way is up from a third person point of view. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that very compact. That again, that like Empire like ball design. I don't know why. I just really like that design.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's really cool. And for Republic, my favorite is the Snow Speeder. I love the Snow Speeder.
Great choice.
Mainly because I like the tow cable thing, like the little
Yeah.
tow cable stuff. I love that, and I love how like it's like low to the ground. I love the kind of webbed duck foot like design. Like it
Yeah.
has like this very kind of. I mean, X-wing is the best, but I feel like that's like it's like getting vanilla at Baskin Robbins, kind of like why you can do all the options he chose that one. Like I'm just playing, but really I love the design of like the snow speeder. For me, like Empire is like one of my favorite films, and that whole opening scene with the dun, 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 like I just love the snow speeder, like the tow cable. You have that again, that pilot in the back who's in charge of like taking care of your rear and stuff. The design is really dope. And then for the Empire, the TIE Interceptor. I love the small angles, like we talk about, like very sharp
Yeah.
features, like on the wings. I love the TIE Interceptor favorite. So, okay, now I'm done.
Well, there we go. So I think it's been another great episode. My Star Wars show really on a roll, I think. 2 episodes in, we're on a roll. Now I'm going to do a little bit of mathematics in my head. This, today as we're recording, we record on Sundays and they're posted the following Saturday. So this episode's going to come out on the
26.
the 28th? Say the 19th? Yeah, so the 28th this comes out. Because it's one day less than a week from today. Is that true? Yeah. So 26th or
That would be
7th,
25th, the 5th.
25th.
Yeah.
The 25th is when this comes out. This is why I'm a humanities major. But you're correct. This comes out on the 25th. That's totally right. You guys are in for a real treat because it's going to be a bonus episode of this show on the 29th or the 30th, depending on how our schedules work out, for Book of Boba Fett episode 1. We will cover the premiere, then we'll go back to regular episodes to get a bonus episode this month. But these episodes are only going to happen for the big stuff like Book of Boba Fett's premiere. We will not be talking about Book of Boba Fett again after that episode until the season is wrapped, and then the regular episode for that week, whenever that ends up being, will be just a review of the whole series. But we'll get a bonus there. So you're welcome. Merry Christmas or any other holiday you celebrate. That's what you're getting from me this year. It's also going to be late, so it's really not an awesome gift, but early New Year's present. But I think that's enough faffing about here at the end of the episode. Do a little bit of scheduling on the fly on camera. But as usual, Andrew, thank you for joining me in what is Backlog Banter's premiere non-video game show. Don't tell anyone I said that. But we'll be back very soon for even more. Thanks again for watching. If you made it this far, definitely join the Discord so we can talk to you about Star Wars. But otherwise, Andrew?
May the Force be with you.